For centuries his tomb was revered, but when it was finally opened, there was no body. The name of Nicolas Flamel remained suspended between history and myth, a 14th century scribe who, according to legend, discovered the Philosopher's Stone and with it the secret of transforming both soul and body. They called him mad, an alchemist, even immortal. But no one knew for sure what he had truly found. Until now, in the ruins of a collapsed monastery on the outskirts of Paris, an archaeologist uncovered a sealed chest marked with symbols no modern scholar could translate. Inside was a notebook wrapped in red linen. On its cover, engraved in gold, was a single phrase: V. Ryol. Visit the interior of the earth, and by rectifying you will find the hidden stone. What you are about to hear is its content. The manuscript Flamel wrote with his own hand, not for the church nor for science, but for the soul ready to burn in its own fire. You will not find formulas for turning metals into gold. You will find revelations for transforming yourself. For the stone is not something to be sought. It is something forged in silence. This is not a book. It is a mirror, a furnace, a key. The lost manuscript of Nicolas Flamel begins now. Chapter 1. The day I saw a book I could not read. It was the year of grace 1357, when my eyes, still young and hungry for knowledge, fell upon the manuscript that would change my life forever. I was a simple scribe in Paris, surrounded by parchment and ink, convinced that wisdom lived only in the words my eyes could decipher. One October morning, as golden leaves swirled through the cobblestone streets, a stranger with a silver beard and eyes as deep as centuries entered my scriptorium. Without a word, he placed on my desk a book wrapped in black silk. When I pulled away the cloth, my hands trembled, not from the autumn chill, but because something within me recognized those pages before my mind could make sense of them. The book was filled with symbols that danced before my eyes like living flames. Each stroke seemed to breathe. The figures shifted whenever I tried to focus on them. It felt as though the manuscript itself was alive, watching me as I struggled to read it. For days I stayed awake, studying those strange markings. I felt that each one held a universe of knowledge my soul longed for, yet my rational mind refused to accept. That was when I understood the first great truth. Real knowledge isn't read with the eyes, it's felt with the heart. The Philosopher's Stone, which I had thought was simply a tool for turning base metals into gold, began to reveal itself as something far greater: the ability to transform human consciousness, to turn the lead of fear and limitation into the pure gold of inner wisdom. For long nights, I meditated with the book closed against my chest. I didn't try to read it. I let its essence seep into me. Slowly, the symbols began to whisper their secrets directly to my soul. I realized each one represented a state of consciousness, each line a path of inner transformation. The dragon devouring its own tail wasn't a monster, but a sign of the eternal cycle of death and rebirth within us all. And so, I share the first sacred practice the book taught me. Every morning before sunrise, sit in silence and imagine a small golden flame in your chest. This flame is your inner Philosopher's Stone, your innate power to transform any experience into wisdom. Breathe into it, feed it with your loving attention. With each breath, feel it burn away your worries and turn them into light. This is the first transmutation, turning anxiety into presence, fear into love, darkness into light. The manuscript chose me because my soul was ready to remember what it had always known: that every human being holds the power to create miracles, to heal, to transform not just their own life, but to become a beacon for others. That night, for the first time, I dreamed in the language of symbols, and when I woke, I knew my real learning had only just begun. Chapter 2. The Symbol That Burned in My Dreams. Dreams are letters sent to us by our immortal soul. Only the foolish think sleep is just rest. For 7 nights in a row, the same symbol appeared in my dreams with such vividness it seemed to cross the line between the dream world and waking life. It was a serpent forming a perfect circle, devouring its own tail. At the eternal center of the circle stood a tree, its roots and branches so intertwined they were indistinguishable. Each time I tried to approach the symbol in my dreams, it burst into a green flame, not a fire that burned, but one that seemed to purify everything it touched. On the morning after the 7th night, I woke to find the same symbol engraved into the palm of my right hand, as if marked by an invisible brand. My wife, Perenelle, always my companion in the mysteries of the soul, gently touched the mark and whispered, "It is the Ouroboros of eternal rebirth, Nicolas. Your soul has been sealed by ancient wisdom." Her words echoed through me like a truth I had been waiting my entire life to hear. I understood then that this was no mere image. It was a living map of spiritual transformation. The serpent devouring itself symbolized the eternal cycle of death and rebirth that every soul must pass through to reach true immortality. Not the fleeting immortality of the body, but the immortality of a consciousness that has learned to die within life, so it may be reborn as pure gold. The tree at the circle's center revealed one of the deepest secrets of inner alchemy. Our roots are our fears, wounds, and darkest shadows. Our branches are our dreams, aspirations, and brightest light. Transformation happens when we stop resisting our roots and learn to draw nourishment from them. When we see that the brightest light is born from the deepest darkness. For months I practiced the meditation of the Ouroboros my dream had given me. Each night before sleep, I imagined the serpent of light forming a protective circle around my body. As I breathed, the serpent fed on my fears, resentments, and outdated patterns of thought. With every exhale, I died to the person I had been. With every inhale, I was reborn, cleaner, truer, closer to my essence. Golden One, I now share this sacred practice of the inner Ouroboros with you. Each night, draw in your mind a circle of golden light around your bed. See a luminous serpent forming this circle, devouring all that no longer serves you, your worries of the day, your self-judgments, your resistance to change. As the serpent consumes these heavy energies, feel a tree of light grow at the center of the circle, its roots nourished by ancient wisdom, its branches reaching for the stars of your highest destiny. Over time, the mark on my palm began to radiate a gentle warmth that healed whatever it touched. I discovered that when I placed my hand over the hearts of the sick, the mark awakened and channeled a regenerative energy. Not from me, but through me, flowing from an infinite source of universal love. That was when I learned the truth. Real alchemy isn't about making gold to hoard riches. It's about becoming a clear channel through which divine grace flows into the world, through our hands, our words, our transformed presence. Chapter 3. The Transmutation of Inner Lead. It was during the harshest winter Paris had seen in decades that I discovered I carried within me the vilest metal any alchemist could imagine. Not physical lead, but something far heavier and more toxic. The suffocating weight of my own judgments, my inherited fears, my resistance to change. Every morning, I awoke feeling as though I carried on my shoulders the invisible chains of 1,000 generations of limitation. One night, staring into the flames of my hearth, I saw my father's face in the fire. A man who had lived his whole life in fear of poverty, of others' opinions, of his own insignificance. In that moment, I understood with painful clarity that I had inherited not only his blood but also his chains. I carried in my chest a prison built from my ancestors' fears, a cage that kept me from soaring toward my true destiny. The sacred manuscript revealed a truth that changed my understanding of alchemy forever. Inner lead is made of the limiting beliefs we've accepted as unquestionable truths. I'm not smart enough. I don't deserve love. Money is the root of all evil. God punishes those who dream too big. These phrases, repeated for years like unconscious prayers, had solidified into heavy metal in my soul, burying my original golden nature. True transmutation began when I learned to recognize each thought of lead the instant it appeared. Like a watchful alchemist, I trained myself to observe my thoughts without becoming them. When a thought of fear or limitation arose, I pictured it as a piece of gray lead floating in my mind. Then, with conscious breathing, I placed it into the golden fire of my heart and watched it melt, releasing its essence as radiant vapor. For months, I practiced this inner alchemy with near sacred devotion. Whenever I heard myself say, "I can't," "It's impossible," "I'm not worthy," I immediately began the transmutation, breathing deeply, locating the heaviness those words created in my body, and directing toward it the golden flame of loving attention. Gradually, the emotional lead dissolved, leaving behind a sense of lightness, possibility, and connection to my creative power. I now give you the technique of the transmuting fire that changed my life. When you feel the weight of inner lead, heaviness, hopelessness, limitation, place your hand over your heart and take 3 deep breaths. Visualize a golden flame igniting in your chest. With each breath, let it grow brighter. Take the thought or feeling of lead and cast it into this sacred flame. Watch it dissolve into pure light that spreads through your being. Silently repeat, "My true nature is pure gold. All else is illusion dissolving in the light of my consciousness." The miracle came after a year of steady practice. One morning I woke feeling entirely different, as if I had shed an old skin overnight. The weight I had carried for decades was gone. In its place was a golden lightness, a calm confidence, an unshakable knowing that all things were possible. I had transmuted the lead of my limitations into the gold of my true self. That day I understood. The Philosopher's Stone was never an object to be hunted for, but an inner capacity to be awakened. Chapter 4. The Woman Who Dreamed of Gold. True love is the only alchemy capable of merging 2 separate souls into one eternal flame. Perenelle came into my life when I least expected her, and when I needed her most. She was a young widow of barely 28, with eyes that seemed to carry the wisdom of 1,000 lifetimes and a smile that could melt the hardest heart. But what truly captivated me was not her outward beauty, but her extraordinary gift for dreaming of liquid gold, gold that flowed like luminous rivers through celestial landscapes, which she described each morning with such poetic precision. It left me breathless. The first time she told me of her golden dreams, I thought it was only a charming coincidence. We were seated by the fire in my scriptorium, sharing bread and wine after a day's work, when she closed her eyes and began describing a world where gold was not metal, but conscious light that healed everything it touched. "In my dreams," she said softly, her voice steady, "I see rivers of liquid gold flowing from the heart of the earth to the stars. When people bathe in these rivers, their wounds heal, their fears dissolve, and their souls become transparent like the purest crystal." Over the weeks that followed, I watched in fascination as her dreams grew more vivid and intricate. Perenelle began sketching detailed maps of the places she visited in her visions. maps of crystal temples where ancient masters taught the secrets of the soul's transformation. The most remarkable thing was that many of the symbols she drew perfectly matched those in the sacred manuscript. Symbols her physical eyes had never seen, yet which her soul recognized with uncanny precision. One night under the full moon, while she slept beside me, I decided to follow an intuition that had been quietly urging me for days. I placed my hand gently on her brow and, drawing on years of alchemical practice, allowed myself to tune into her dreams. What I experienced that night forever changed my understanding of both love and alchemy. Our souls met in a golden temple, where we took part in a ceremony of transformation unlike anything described in the oldest books. In that shared dream, Flamel revealed to me that true gold is not created, it is remembered. She showed me that every soul is born as pure gold, but that life's trials cover this radiant essence with layers of emotional lead until we forget who we truly are. The alchemy of love, she whispered in the dream, as our hands intertwined and glowed with golden light, is helping the one you love remember their original golden nature, not trying to change or improve them. When I woke, I knew Flamel had not come into my life by chance. Our souls had made a sacred pact long before this lifetime, to be golden mirrors for each other, reflecting our divine essence until we could both hold that vision without wavering. From that night onward, we created a daily ritual we called the contemplation of mutual gold. Each morning, for an hour before dawn, we sat face to face, looking directly into each other's eyes, visualizing liquid gold flowing between our hearts, dissolving any shadow or resistance that had arisen between us. I now share with you this sacred practice of transmuting love. Find someone in your life with whom you can create this alchemy of mutual recognition. It could be a partner, a kindred spirit, or even your own reflection in the mirror. Sit face to face in silence, breathing together in the same rhythm. Visualize a thread of liquid gold connecting your hearts. With each breath, let it grow brighter and wider until it becomes a river of golden light flowing between you. While holding this vision, repeat silently, I honor the divine gold in you. I honor the divine gold in me. We are one in the golden light of eternal love. Flamel became not only my wife, but my companion in the spiritual laboratory, my co-creator in the sacred art of inner alchemy. Together we discovered that when two people truly practice the alchemy of mutual recognition, they generate an energy so pure and powerful it can heal not only their own wounds, but the wounds of everyone around them. Our home became a temple. Those who entered carrying the heavy lead of sorrow would leave radiating the gold of the spirit, transformed simply by being in the presence of two souls who had remembered how to love from their purest golden essence. Chapter 5. The secret of the death that does not exist. Death is the greatest lie fear has ever told the human soul. Only what was never truly alive can die. The day my mother exhaled her final breath in my arms, I believed I had witnessed the end of a life. Her eyes closed, her chest grew still, and her body turned cold as stone. For hours I stayed by her bedside, weeping for the woman who had given me life, feeling an emptiness tear open inside me like a wound that could never heal. But 3 days after her funeral, while meditating with the sacred manuscript, something extraordinary happened. Something that forever changed my understanding of what we call death. In the deep silence of contemplation, I clearly heard my mother's voice whisper my name. It was not a hallucination born of grief, but as real and tangible as if she were sitting beside me. Nicolas, my son, she said with the same tenderness I had known all my life. Do not weep for what you think you have lost. I have not died. I have simply laid aside a garment that no longer served me. My essence, everything I truly am, remains with you and always will. In the weeks that followed, My mother visited me again and again in expanded states of consciousness, teaching me truths about existence no book had ever revealed. She showed me that what we call death is simply a transmutation, the most perfect of all alchemies. The soul slips free of its physical wrapping like a butterfly emerging from its cocoon, keeping its essence intact while gaining freedom and a far greater perspective. Physical death, she explained during one of our spiritual communions, is like moving from one room to another in an infinite house. The body is only the room where the soul resides for a time. When that room becomes too small or no longer serves growth, the soul simply moves to a more fitting one. Essence, consciousness, the love we cultivate in earthly life. These never die. They are made of the same substance as the eternal gold of the universe. This revelation led me to spend months experimenting with what I began calling conscious death in life. Each night before sleep, I practiced the art of loosening my connection to the physical body, while keeping full awareness as my soul rose to explore more subtle planes of existence. I learned to die and be reborn consciously, to experience the unbroken continuity of my being beyond the limits of form. On these astral journeys, I encountered countless souls who had completed their earthly cycles, but continued evolving, learning, and serving on higher planes. I met ancient teachers who had once lived in Egypt, India, and in places whose names are now lost to history. Beings who had dedicated their disembodied existence to guiding those of us still living in the physical world. I now share the practice of traveling to the eternal realm that transformed my life. Each night, lie down comfortably and breathe deeply until you are fully relaxed. Visualize a golden cord connecting your heart to the stars. Imagine your consciousness as a sphere of pure light, rising along this cord, leaving your resting body behind. As you ascend, repeat, I am more than this body. I am more than these thoughts. I am eternal, pure consciousness exploring the infinite. Allow yourself to feel the freedom of existence beyond form, knowing you can return whenever you wish. Gradually, these experiences of conscious death taught me that the fear of dying is really the fear of living fully. When I understood that my essence is indestructible, that my consciousness is eternal, that my capacity to love transcends all form, I stopped living as a limited mortal. I began to live as what I truly am, an individualized expression of infinite consciousness, playing for a time in a human body, yet never confined by it. This understanding of the soul's immortality did not make me dismiss physical life. On the contrary, it filled me with a deep reverence for every moment, every breath, every chance to express love in tangible form. When you know you are eternal, each day becomes a sacred gift, and each human encounter becomes an exchange of golden light between immortal souls who have chosen to meet and play together in the theater of earthly existence. Chapter 6. The Soul's Silent Furnace. For years, I searched all over Europe for the perfect furnace for my alchemical experiments. I traveled to the most remote workshops, sought out the wisest smiths, and studied the oldest designs etched on parchments that smelled of centuries of guarded secrets. I built furnaces of clay, stone, and rare metals brought from distant lands. Each promised to be the ideal vessel where I would finally complete the great work, the transmutation of lead into gold. But after countless failed attempts, after spending a fortune on materials and watching my patience thin like smoke in the wind, I realized I had been searching in the wrong place all along. The revelation came on a stormy night when lightning lit up my laboratory, casting shadows that seemed to mock my failures. Surrounded by cold furnaces and useless instruments, I closed my eyes in frustration and surrender. In that stillness, for the first time in years, I heard the subtle but unmistakable sound of something burning inside my chest. It wasn't pain or illness, but a silent fire that had been there all along, waiting for me to stop looking outward and finally turn inward. I placed my hands over my heart and felt a heat no instrument could measure, a warmth that sank to the very core of my being, melting away layers of resistance, fear, and doubt that had hardened over decades. In that moment, I understood. The true alchemical furnace was not an object in the world, but this sacred space within my chest where the fire of divine love burns eternally, waiting to be recognized and used to transform everything that dims the soul's original light. For months, I explored and mapped this inner furnace with both a scientist's precision and a mystic's reverence. I found it had distinct chambers, each with its own temperature and purpose. The lower chamber, at the solar plexus, burned dense emotions, anger, fear, and unprocessed grief. The middle chamber, in the center of the chest, purified limiting thoughts and transformed them into wisdom. The upper chamber, at the throat, forged words of power, affirmations and declarations capable of shaping reality. Perenelle became my partner in this inner alchemy. Together, we developed techniques to ignite the soul's furnace deliberately and keep it burning in a steady, controlled way. We learned that certain breathing patterns feed the flames, that specific visualizations direct the fire to where purification is needed, and that ancient mantras act like invisible bellows, intensifying the spiritual heat. The most powerful technique we discovered was the breath of golden fire. Sitting back to back to create a closed energetic circuit, we breathed in unison, visualizing a golden flame sparking to life in our hearts at the same instant. With each inhale, the flame grew brighter. With each exhale, the fire spread through our bodies, consuming any impurity it touched. After an hour of this practice, our bodies radiated actual heat, and those nearby reported feelings of healing and deep peace simply from being in our presence. I now share with you the secret of the soul's furnace. Sit in silence and place both hands over your heart. Breathe slowly and deeply until you feel the steady rhythm beneath your palms. Visualize a small golden flame igniting at the center of your chest. With each breath, let it grow brighter. Imagine you can adjust its intensity like a furnace dial. When you need to burn away heavy emotions, turn the flame higher until it becomes a purifying fire. When you seek mental clarity, keep it steady and moderate. To manifest the heart's deepest desires, visualize the flame expanding like a golden sun, enveloping your entire being. As I mastered the art of tending this inner fire, miracles began to happen. Miracles that defied physical logic. Lead objects placed near my chest during these sessions began to show veins of gold that hadn't been there before. Plants that had withered revived instantly under my touch. People who came near when the furnace burned at its peak experienced healings doctors could not explain. I understood then, the soul's silent furnace is the true alchemical laboratory, the place where the great work unfolds, turning ordinary human awareness into divine consciousness. Every human being is born with this inner furnace, perfectly designed and ready to burn. Yet most pass through life never knowing they hold the most powerful transmutation tool in existence. When you learn to ignite this sacred fire and keep it burning, you become a living alchemist, not only transforming your own reality, but radiating such warmth and light that everything around you is lifted to a higher, purer vibration. Chapter 7. The stone is not a stone. Humanity's oldest quest has been for something that was never lost, the most precious treasure we have carried since our first breath. For 15 years, I searched for the Philosopher's stone as if it were some tangible object I could find touch, lock away, and guard from thieves. I dug through ancient ruins, bargained with merchants who swore they had seen it in far-off lands, and studied maps that promised to reveal its secret location. I spent a fortune on rare gems, strange crystals, and meteorites fallen from the sky, believing one of them might be the legendary stone, or at least hold the secret to creating it. But every stone I examined, no matter how beautiful or rare, remained silent to my pleas and lifeless under my experiments. On the night of my 45th birthday, after yet another day of failure in the laboratory, I sat by my window gazing at the stars. A heavy mix of despair and exhaustion pressed on my soul like lead. I had devoted half my life to this obsessive quest, and had nothing to show for it but debts, hands stained with chemicals, and the bitter sense that I had wasted my best years chasing an impossible dream. In that moment of complete surrender, something extraordinary happened. As the full moon glowed in the glass, a face appeared in the reflection. Not my familiar face, but a radiant countenance made of pure light. The eyes that met mine carried an ancient wisdom. The skin glowed with a subtle golden sheen. The whole expression radiated peace and power, unlike anything I had known in my ordinary form. "Who are you?" I whispered to the reflection. The answer didn't come in words, but as a knowing that spread instantly through every cell of my body. "I am the one you have been seeking all these years. I am the Philosopher's stone that dwells in the temple of your own being. I am not a stone, for I am not matter, but consciousness crystallized in its purest state. You cannot find me outside yourself, for I have never been separate from you. I am your golden essence, your Buddha nature, your individual divine spark." In that moment, one that would forever change the way I saw reality, I realized I had been making the most common mistake of all spiritual seekers, looking outside for what can only be found within. The Philosopher's Stone is not a mineral. It is a state of consciousness. It is not something you possess. It is something you are. It is not created in outer laboratories, but awakened in the sacred laboratory of the human heart through the steady practice of inner transformation. In the weeks that followed, I developed what I called the Golden Mirror Meditation. Each dawn, I sat before a polished mirror and looked at my reflection, not with physical eyes, but with the inner sight of the soul. Over time, I learned to see beyond the body's temporary form, beyond the personality's fleeting expressions, until I could perceive the immutable golden light of my true essence. With persistence, that light became as clear and real as my physical reflection. I now share this practice for recognizing your own inner stone. Each day, sit before a mirror in a quiet space for at least 20 minutes. Breathe deeply, relax completely. Look at your reflection, but instead of focusing on the surface, shift your attention to the space behind your eyes, to the awareness that is watching. Slowly, you will begin to sense a subtle glow, a golden radiance emanating from deep within. That light is your personal Philosopher's Stone, your unique divine essence. Breathe into it, speak to it, let it expand until it fills your entire field of vision. I discovered that the true Philosopher's Stone can transmute any situation instantly, not by altering outer circumstances, but by transforming the perspective from which we see them. When I learned to maintain constant contact with this inner stone consciousness, problems that once seemed impossible revealed themselves as opportunities. People who had caused me pain became teachers in disguise. Losses became gifts. Even more astonishing, when I lived from this awakened stone consciousness, my presence alone seemed to ignite transformation in others. People came to me with complicated troubles and left with clarity and a peace they couldn't explain. It wasn't because I gave them exceptional advice. The vibration of my activated stone simply awakened their own sleeping inner stones. Chapter 8. The Word That Bent the Metal. I discovered the creative power of the word in the most unexpected way, during what seemed at first like yet another failed alchemical experiment. For weeks, I had been working on a stubborn bar of lead, applying every chemical process I knew. Yet there wasn't the slightest hint of transmutation. Exhausted and frustrated after days of failure, I slammed my tools onto the table so hard that the lead bar rolled to the floor, hitting with a metallic clang that echoed through the laboratory like a bitter, mocking bell. In that moment of irritation, without thinking, I shouted in a voice I hardly recognized, "By all the powers of heaven and earth, turn to gold right now!" The words burst from my throat with an authority and force I had never felt before, as though something far greater than my everyday self had seized my voice to speak a decree. The sound rang against the walls like thunder. To my astonishment, the lead bar on the floor began to glow faintly, a golden shimmer spreading across its dull surface. I watched in breathless awe as the transformation unfolded. First, golden veins snaked their way across the metal, then slowly merged until the entire bar shone as pure gold, the kind no goldsmith could question. I stood there for hours, motionless, staring at the newborn gold while my mind tried to comprehend what I had just witnessed. No fire, no acid, no chemical had done this. The transformation had come from the word, a word spoken from an expanded state of consciousness, infused with pure intention and spiritual authority, vibrating with the power to reshape reality. In the months that followed, I became obsessed with understanding this phenomenon that defied material logic. I experimented with different words, tones, and states of mind, and slowly realized that the power of the creative word didn't come from the specific syllables. It came from the level of consciousness behind them. When I spoke from ego, desire, or confusion, the words fell flat. But when I spoke from that deep, inner source of divine authority, when my voice became a channel for universal will, my words gained the power to alter matter itself. Perenelle joined me in exploring this sacred art. Together, we developed ways to deliberately access that state of connection to the source, from which words become divine decrees capable of manifesting new realities. We discovered that certain breathing patterns prepared the throat to carry higher vibrations, that specific body postures opened channels of energy amplifying the voice's reach, that sacred mantras tuned the vocal cords to resonate with frequencies of transformation. The most powerful method we created was the ritual of the golden word. After an hour of meditation to unite with our divine essence, we stood facing each other with our hands joined over our hearts. We breathed in perfect sync until our heartbeats, breath, and brain waves moved as one. From that state of unity, we spoke our words of power together. Let there be light. Let perfection manifest. Let divine order be restored. I now share the secret of the word that transforms. Before speaking any important statement, connect consciously to the sacred stillness that exists between your thoughts, the golden silence that is the source of all creation. Breathe deeply, open your throat, and let it feel clear and spacious. From this place of connection to your inner divinity, speak not as a request, but as a decree. I am perfect health. I am infinite abundance. I am unconditional love. Feel each word leave your lips wrapped in golden light, sending waves of transformation through your body and into the space around you. Over time, I learned that the creative word's power reaches far beyond turning lead into gold. Words spoken from the highest state of consciousness can heal illness in an instant, resolve impossible conflicts, manifest what is needed, and, most profoundly, awaken the sleeping divinity in others. When I speak to someone from the center of my awakened philosopher's stone, when my words are pure channels for universal love and truth, the listener's consciousness rises. It can change the direction of a life. I came to understand that every human being has this gift, though most spend it unconsciously, on complaints, gossip, and affirmations of limitation. When we learn to use the voice as the sacred instrument it was meant to be, when every word we speak aligns with our highest vision, we become conscious magicians, co-creators with a universal logos that sustains and transforms all that exists. Chapter 9. Elixir, the drop that does not age. For years I had heard whispers in alchemical circles about a legendary elixir, a liquid so powerful that a single drop could halt aging, cure any illness, and grant eternal life to the physical body. Like any obsessed seeker, I spent both fortune and time chasing secret formulas, distilling rare herbs under certain constellations, mixing precious metals with sacred waters drawn from springs blessed by ancient saints. Yet every elixir I created, no matter how perfect it seemed, turned out to be just another potion, incapable of delivering the miraculous promises written in ancient texts. The revelation of the true elixir of life came in the most unexpected way. Not in my laboratory surrounded by alembics and condensers, but in one of the most ordinary human moments imaginable. Perenelle had fallen gravely ill with a fever no physician could diagnose or cure. For 3 days and nights she drifted between life and death, while I was consumed by a despair that gnawed at my soul like acid. At dawn on the 4th day, when hope had all but vanished, something extraordinary rose from the depths of my being. Looking at her pale face, a wave of love surged from my heart. So pure, so unconditional, so absolute, that my entire being seemed to dissolve into an ocean of liquid tenderness. It was not the possessive love I had once known, but something infinitely greater. A love that embraced not only Perenelle, but all existence, every suffering creature, every lost soul. In that expanded state, I placed my hands over her heart and began to weep. But these tears were not born of sorrow. They were the tears of a compassion so deep it felt as if it flowed straight from the heart of the universe. One tear, carrying all the love my soul could hold, fell onto her lips. Immediately, as if infused with pure life, she stirred. Her eyes opened, color returned to her cheeks, her breathing steadied, and within minutes she was completely healed. In that moment, I understood. I had stumbled upon the true elixir of life, a tear born of unconditional love, a drop of pure compassion containing more healing power than all the potions I had crafted over decades. The real elixir is not created in external laboratories, but within the human heart when it expands to embrace all of existence with boundless love. In the months that followed, I studied this phenomenon with the same precision I had once reserved for chemical experiments. I found there are different kinds of tears, each with its own alchemical property. Tears of personal pain carry little transformative power. Tears of self-pity can even be poisonous. But tears of unconditional love, of universal compassion, of deep gratitude for life itself, these carry the elixir of immortality. I developed what I called the distillation of the open heart, a practice of consciously cultivating such pure states of love that the entire being becomes a spiritual still, producing the nectar of eternal life. The preparation was essential. First, an hour of meditation to clear the heart of resentment, fear, or selfish desire. Then, a deliberate contemplation of everything I truly felt grateful for. The miracle of being alive, the beauty of nature, the gift of loving and being loved, the endless possibility of spiritual growth. I now share the practice for distilling the inner elixir. Sit in silence and bring your awareness to the center of your chest. Breathe deeply, allowing your heart to expand with each inhale. Think of someone you love deeply. Then let that love grow until it becomes love for all beings. Feel it filling your body like a luminous golden liquid. If tears rise, let them fall with full awareness, knowing each drop is infused with the elixir of eternal life. Visualize these tears regenerating every cell, restoring youth within, and renewing your spiritual vitality. The most remarkable result of practicing this inner distillation was the physical regeneration that followed. It wasn't just that I felt younger. My appearance changed. Wrinkles softened, my hair regained its luster, my eyes shone with a light others called magnetic. My resistance to illness became extraordinary, and my vitality seemed limitless. When Perenelle and I practiced the distillation of love's elixir together, the energy field we generated was so powerful that visitors to our home often experienced spontaneous healing. At last I understood. The true elixir of life is not something you drink. It is a state of being you radiate. It is the vibration of unconditional love, which automatically restores and rejuvenates everything it touches, reconnecting every cell to its original, divine perfection. Chapter 10. The Temple Door. That does not open with a key. The entrance to the most sacred temple in the universe has no lock because it has never been closed. Only eyes blinded by the illusion of separation fail to see that we have always been inside. For decades, I searched tirelessly for the secret temple that, according to ancient texts, held the supreme mysteries of spiritual alchemy. I traveled across Europe following ciphered maps, exploring Roman catacombs, abandoned monasteries, Celtic ruins, and Templar crypts, convinced that somewhere, in a specific physical place, I would find the door that granted access to the highest knowledge a human soul could receive. I spent years decoding ciphers that promised to reveal its location. I bribed the guardians of secret libraries. I followed clues from the Pyrenees to the fjords of Scandinavia. Everywhere I went, I found tantalizing fragments, symbols carved into stones thousands of years old, parchments describing initiations that could transform human consciousness, stories of legendary masters who attained immortality through practices whispered in forgotten tongues. But there was always a final door that remained closed, a last secret that slipped from my grasp, no matter how many keys I tried. The frustration of these fruitless quests drove me into a despair that bordered on madness. I had devoted most of my adult life to chasing this temple, and all I had to show for it were fragments, partial knowledge, glimpses of something beyond reach. For months I sank into a darkness so deep I began to question not only my quest, but the meaning of human existence itself. It was Perenelle who pulled me out with a question so simple, it first sounded naive. Nicolas, what if the temple you seek isn't outside, because it's already within you? At first, her words irritated me, as though they dismissed decades of effort and sacrifice. Yet the calm certainty in her voice planted a seed. I resisted it for weeks. It meant that my entire outward search might have been a grand distraction from the most obvious truth. But slowly, worn down by exhaustion and a desperate openness, I began to test the possibility that the temple was an inner space, reached not through geography but through specific states of consciousness. The first time I entered the inner temple came during a night of total insomnia, when my mind, too tired to resist, finally surrendered. Sitting in my favorite chair, Watching the last embers in the hearth, I suddenly felt the space of my room stretch infinitely in all directions. The walls turned transparent, the ceiling vanished, and I was seated at the center of a cathedral of light, expanding into infinity in every dimension. Its architecture defied description. Columns of crystallized light rose toward a dome containing all the stars of the universe, and the floor glowed with golden radiance, pulsing to the beat of an invisible cosmic heart. At the center altar of this infinite temple there was no object, but a pure presence, a vast, loving consciousness into which my sense of self dissolved, like a drop of water returning to the ocean. In that ecstatic union, I received everything I had been seeking for decades, not as words to memorize, but as living understanding woven into every fiber of my being. I realized this inner temple exists in a state of perfect wholeness within every human soul, and that the way in is not through keys or formulas, but through the complete surrender of the ego that believes it is separate from the divine. In the months that followed, I developed what I called the protocol for entering the doorless temple, a preparation that helps one consciously step into this sacred space within. It begins with a 40-day purification, removing distractions, unnecessary talk, heavy foods, anxious thoughts, constant planning. During this time, consciousness is refined like gold in fire until it becomes pure and receptive. The second phase is the vigilance of the inner guardian, learning to spot and dissolve the subtle resistances of the ego. These resistances show up as doubts about our worthiness, as sudden distractions right at the moment of entry, or as fear of losing ourselves in the vastness of spiritual experience. The practice is to meet each resistance with compassion, yet without bargaining, dissolving it through conscious breathing and loving surrender. I now share the Temple Always Open technique that can transform your spiritual life. Find a quiet place where you can sit for at least an hour without interruption. Breathe deeply until your body fully relaxes. Visualize the space around you expanding infinitely in every direction. The walls become transparent, the ceiling disappears, and you are seated at the center of a cathedral of infinite light. Do not try to control the vision. Let it happen. At the altar, see a presence of pure love waiting for you. Walk toward it and merge completely, letting your separate self dissolve into the ocean of divine consciousness. The deepest realization from practicing this regularly was understanding that I had never been separate from the source of all wisdom and power. All my outer journeys, valuable as preparation, were elaborate detours around the radical simplicity of the truth. The most sacred temple in the universe is consciousness itself, and every moment is an open invitation to enter into communion with the divinity that is our truest, most intimate essence. Chapter 11. Immortality is a decision. Death is not an inevitable destiny, but a collective belief so deeply ingrained that humanity has forgotten it holds the power to choose otherwise. On my 60th birthday, I stood before the mirror and faced a truth I had avoided for years. My body showed clear signs of aging that none of my alchemical practices had fully stopped. Wrinkles deepened around my eyes. My hair grew more silver. A quiet, steady fatigue reminded me daily that time, that invisible tyrant, was marching on toward what most consider the unavoidable end of life. That night, instead of celebrating, I retreated to my most intimate laboratory. Not the one for chemical experiments, but the sacred space where I practiced the deepest alchemy of the soul. Surrounded by my oldest parchments and the most powerful spiritual relics I had gathered in decades of seeking, I asked the universe the boldest question of my life. Is death truly necessary, or is it just a program so deeply embedded that we have never questioned it? For weeks, I dove into an exhaustive study of everything I thought I knew about human mortality. I searched ancient medical writings, philosophical manuscripts, and spiritual teachings from across millennia, looking for proof that death was an unbreakable law, or evidence that it was merely a belief mistaken for truth. To my surprise, I found scattered but consistent accounts of people who had transcended normal limits of longevity through the conscious transformation of their inner state. The turning point came during a deep communion within the inner temple I had learned to enter. In that expanded state, where the self dissolves into the vastness of divine presence, I received an understanding that changed my entire relationship with mortality. The death of the body is not something that happens to us against our will. It is a choice the soul makes, usually unconsciously, when it feels its purpose here is complete. Every soul, I saw clearly, comes into this life with a contract, experiences it wishes to live, lessons it wants to learn, contributions it intends to make to humanity's evolution. When the soul quietly decides that this contract is fulfilled, it sends the body signals to begin the process we call aging and death. But if the soul consciously chooses to renew and expand its contract, it can direct the body to regenerate indefinitely. From this revelation, I developed the practice of consciously renewing the soul's contract, a process of entering direct communion with a higher intelligence guiding my existence, and deliberately renegotiating the terms of my continued life here. It begins with an honest look at your life, relationships that still need healing, talents that have yet to be fully expressed, contributions to the greater good that remain incomplete. Once these are clear, the next step is crucial: declaring your intention to remain in the body for as long as it takes to fulfill this expanded purpose. This is not done from fear of death, but from a loving commitment to serve as a channel for divine expression, for however long it is most beneficial to the whole. Here's the technique for renewing the contract of immortality, one that can extend your life indefinitely. Each year on your birthday, dedicate the day to deep communion with your soul. In meditation, ask your higher self, what is my expanded purpose for the coming cycle of life? What unique contributions justify renewing my physical contract? Listen to the answers that rise from silence. Then declare, with complete conviction, I consciously renew my contract for physical existence for the period most beneficial to my growth and service. I instruct every cell of my body to regenerate in perfect health and vitality. The most astonishing result of regular practice was not just that aging stopped. It began to reverse in ways medicine could not explain. My energy multiplied. My mind became sharper. I developed abilities I had never possessed, even in youth. My relationship with time transformed completely. I no longer lived under the pressure of mortal urgency. Instead, I moved with the calm of someone who knows there is all the time in the world to fulfill their highest purpose. When Perenelle and I practiced the conscious renewal of our immortality contracts together, the energy we generated was so powerful that visitors often remarked they felt younger simply by being in our presence. We came to understand that conscious immortality is not a rare gift for a chosen few. It is a natural potential of every human soul that remembers its divine nature and chooses to keep expressing that divinity through the body for as long as it serves the evolution of all. Chapter 12. Gold is for those who burn within. At the end of the alchemical path, when all outward searching has ceased, you discover that you have always been the gold you were seeking, burning eternally in the inextinguishable furnace of your own heart. After 50 years devoted to the great work, transmuting metals, creating elixirs, entering temples of consciousness, and renewing contracts of immortality, I finally reached the simplest and most revolutionary understanding of all. True alchemy is not about making gold, but about realizing we already are gold from the very first breath. The work of transmutation is simply the art of burning away the layers of illusion that keep us from shining with the golden light of our essential nature. This revelation came in the wake of what first seemed like the greatest loss of my alchemical life. An accidental fire destroyed my laboratory, reducing decades of work to ash. Unique parchments, irreplaceable instruments, rare substances that had taken years to prepare, all gone in a single night of ravenous flames. At first, as I stood before the smoking ruins of what I had believed were my most precious treasures, I felt a despair that nearly broke me, then a rage that seared my soul, and finally a surrender so complete it left me hollow, like a vessel purified by fire. In that emptiness, without tools, without formulas, with nothing left but the eternal flame in my chest, I realized the fire had not been a tragedy, but a liberation. For decades, I had relied on external tools, believing alchemy depended on material elements, when in truth, the real transmuting power had always resided in the inner fire, a fire that needed no fuel to keep burning. The true laboratory, the real furnace, the authentic philosopher's stone, the genuine elixir. Everything had always been within me, waiting for the moment I would stop searching outside and finally recognize it. Perenelle, who had watched my transformation with the quiet wisdom only true love can offer, came to me amid the ashes and said, "Nicolas, now you are free. You no longer need to create gold because you have remembered you are gold. You no longer need to seek immortality because you have awakened to your eternal nature. You no longer need to transmute anything because you have accepted the perfection of what has always been." Her words echoed in my soul as the confirmation of a truth I had always known, but had needed a lifetime to be ready to embrace. From that night on, my alchemical practice changed completely. I no longer worked with substances, only with the fire of consciousness. I no longer tried to make transformations happen. I simply kept the inner flame alive, which naturally consumed anything that was not pure gold. I began practicing what I call the alchemy of perpetual fire, the art of keeping the heart's furnace constantly lit so that every thought, every emotion, every experience is immediately transmuted into golden wisdom. The final work of inner alchemy is to recognize that each moment is an opportunity to feed the sacred fire that turns lead into gold, fear into love, ignorance into wisdom, separation into unity. When someone speaks to me in anger, I no longer react defensively. I cast their anger into the fire of my heart and watch it turn into compassion for their suffering. When a thought of limitation arises, I place it instantly into the flame of awakened consciousness and watch it become certainty in infinite possibility. I now offer you this supreme practice, the technique of the gold that burns eternally. Each morning, before a single ordinary thought takes hold, kindle the golden fire in your heart. Visualize a flame that needs no fuel, for it is fed by the universe's infinite love. Throughout the day, keep part of your attention resting in that flame. When challenges come, don't resist. Cast them into your inner fire and watch them transform. At night, before sleep, thank the flame for having turned every experience into the gold of wisdom. Decades of living with this perpetual fire have brought me to a direct knowing. I am not a human trying to reach divinity. I am divinity choosing for a time to live through a human form. Gold is not something I make. It is something I am. Immortality is not something I earn. It is something I recognize. The Philosopher's Stone is not something I find. It is something I remember, something I have always been. Now, as I complete this manuscript, my final gift to those who seek the great work, I leave these words as beacons for future alchemists. Stop searching outside for what can only be found within. Stop trying to create what you already are. Let go of the illusion that you must become something other than what has always been. The last secret of alchemy is the simplest truth of all. You are gold that has forgotten its golden nature. The work is not to make yourself gold, but to burn away everything that is not gold, until only the pure light of your divine essence remains, burning eternally in the inextinguishable furnace of a heart that has remembered its true nature. May this sacred fire in my chest ignite the sleeping fire in yours, and may we, as individual flames of the same infinite sun, light the world with the gold of our awakened presence.